given by the resolution or the bylaws. But I ended up seeking more information, feeling that if I hadn't, then we would be more vulnerable to lawsuit. But I took copious notes. I consulted the attorney. Is it okay for me to do this? So I think it's best to either say, yes, the secretary can solicit additional clarifying information or supporting evidence, or not.
My recollection is the way it was explained to me was the reason why there's this gap, for lack of a better term, between the time that the applications are received by the secretary and the time secretary certifies them to the elections committee is for precisely that reason. In other words, if there's a question, the secretary can informally go back to the candidate and say, your address in the application is not correct, or your name is not correct, or you didn't attach this, or something like that. Now, that the registration form may change based upon our next conversation, but I don't really have a problem, since that time frame is sort of built in, with there being conversations or communications between the secretary, the candidate, counsel, staff. I mean, some of that's already sort of laid out in some of these suggested changes to the bylaws. So I would simply say, you don't have to say they have the authority. I mean, the language in V, small v, with the exception of the last 1, 2, maybe 3 sentences that we would suggest should be deleted, leave that open to those conversations on the notion.
Okay, so Steve, let me ask you this question.
As Jim points
Here
out,
it says, in the case where the form has not been completed correctly, the secretary will identify the information needed. And so that's a clear cut. There's something wrong on the application.
Right.
Which could include something as simple as, I can't read your handwriting.
Exactly.
You know? I mean,
exactly.
So
but as far as the secretary having the burden to identify what other documents they may support somebody's claim of being, for example, a trustee, or, you know, something else that's not straightforward.
I think that needs to, then are we going to have required bullets on the application that says, if you are not the sole owner, or, you know, or if you are part of a trust or LLC, whatever those kind of terms are, have a bullet underneath that said, please attach.
Or you're required to attach.
So, yes,
you know,
to make it as part of a requirement that if you say you are an owner based on a trust format, then you need to provide and show the documentation. And again, goes back to that candidate knowing ahead of time when they look at the application to say, oh, okay, I'm going to need time to go grab this, you know, from the courthouse or print or whatever they need to do. But if they're just a regular husband and wife and, you know, there's no questions, I guess, do you have to prove that you're the owners then, yourselves too, versus just requiring the secretary to go to the Worcester County records?
Steve.
Well, I think the point is, part of this language and part of our discussion is anticipation of what we're going to do in terms of the candidate registration form, which Colette raised in her email to Jim after the last board meeting, which is, you know, some of these suggested changes in the bylaws are not going to be in effect when this current election or upcoming election takes place. So it will be a somewhat inexact solution. But I do think the secretary will know what's supposed to be in the application. And if there's something missing from the application, well, then the secretary can go back and say to the candidate, you know,
Where is it? Or
what's the story, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, the notion, and this was explained to me when we went through this once before, the conversations, if you will, that take place in that intervening 2 weeks are not necessarily formal in terms of everything has to be cataloged, but it's probably meant to avoid the sort of situation that arose that triggered the FAR litigation. I mean, even at the special board meeting, I remember Frank saying to Mr. Farr at some point in one of our earlier conversations, you pointed out that if you just had to catch the correct name, that is junior as opposed to senior, maybe this wouldn't have happened. I mean, that's just, I'm not sure that we're not trying to dance on the head of a pin a little bit here. If the secretary has an obligation to do something more than just shuffle the paper and pass it on, but by the same token, the secretary should not have the discretion just to change the time frame for the election. I mean, what all this is really saying is the candidate, if the candidate is smart, as Bob points out, they've been thinking about running for 6 months or more.
Right.
They'll get the application in April before May. I mean, part of that is, you know, if you're smart, you'll get this out of the way in a hurry.
Right.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
So there are no other changes to MO9 that you guys are suggesting
Well,
that I take to the board?
Well, hang on real quick. Let me make one more comment. I'm not sure I know I can express this very well, but I am not opposed to the secretary taking such action as is necessary to avoid a declaration of ineligibility when there is other information that could support this individual's eligibility. I don't have any problem with before a person is being declared ineligible, that person is given an opportunity to understand why and provide information that supports the true eligibility. And I don't know how to express it other than the way that I just did. I don't want to try to sit here and write out that. But I am firm on the being opposed to an extension because of whatever reason. You know, the secretary can't be given an extension authority over bylaws provisions. I'm, you know, Colette is asking us, other than our opposition to the extension, what more? And I don't want to try to express more than what I just said about that. I'm not opposed to the secretary avoiding an improper declaration of ineligibility when that can be cleared up properly or successfully cleared up.
So would this satisfy you in that regard, to add a statement that the secretary has the authority to seek additional information that may support eligibility when eligibility is in doubt?
That would be fine with me.
Okay.
Let's everybody else get a chance here real quick. We're running long.
I agree with that.
My own view is if you delete the last 3 sentences in small v, you've gotten home, you're home on that question. I don't know that you need to change anything more.
Well, what this captures, Steve, is what's in there is about completion of the application correctly. And you know, this statement, I think, goes a step further to what Jim is concerned about, that the application may be completed correctly, but the secretary looks at it and says, well, this guy is not going to qualify for X, Y, or Z reason. to be able to dialogue with the applicant about that in the event that the applicant could provide information that would remove that barrier to eligibility.
Well,
Within, but
again,
it should all be done within our regular
Within the
scheduled
time frame.
broadcast, yes, because we can't keep making exceptions and extending. That's the part I don't
Right.
feel that the secretary should need to do. I mean, who, in all fairness, why would I would wonder why someone would want to put in their application at the very, very last moment and not give themselves time to be, to go through the process correctly, so that if there were questions about their application, they could get it, communicate the correct answers to the secretary before it's time for the secretary to submit all candidate names.
well,
Well,
but
Go ahead, Steve.
well, Colette, I was just going to say, I think in response to the question you're asking, I'll go back to what I said before. Part of the answer to that question is going to be determined on what we recommend in terms of the registration form.
Yes, so maybe it's time to turn your attention to
Yeah,
that.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I think the whole key is the clarity and content of that registration form. I think that'll give you the answer.
right.
Yep.
Okay,
Okay,
so
well,
I'm not going to attribute this sentence to you guys, but I'm going to offer that for the board to consider as a member of the board. Because this is going to be up for dialogue with the board. We want your input because you are the authorities on this, but obviously the directors are going to have their own thoughts that they may want to throw into consideration beyond what you guys were suggesting.
okay,
So,
just
okay,
That's
One
why they're
comment.
directors.
one comment before we go over to the form. There is further on down that there's an addition to one of the subparagraph E. It says the reason for rejection shall be included with the notification. This is the notification to the public and the membership. The rejected candidate or applicant deserves to know about rejection before everybody else does and have an opportunity to contest that if you want to put it that way. Anyway, move on to the form. Josh, can you take us this, skip whatever it may be on the resolution that's lined out and go further on?
Find the draft that I think, are we working from the draft that Keith and Steve worked on
Yeah.
together?
Yeah, keep going.
Not the old one.
There's a separate application form, Josh. I think we're looking at it now. Okay.
That looks
That's the business part of it, yeah.
Okay.
Let's
That's
go
it.
section by section. Section 1. Anybody with any comments?
No,
I have a couple. The fine print under the list of Ocean Pines properties, the second sentence indicates that we're not accepting any corporate entity, LLC, or partnership or agency relationship applications. That's the position we're taking now with regard to the current bylaws?
can't do it. And the bylaws don't prevent it.
Yeah, I agree.
So
Well, the one, again, I don't want to get off on a rabbit hole here, but to be on the board, you've got to be an individual living person, and a corporation is a member, LLC is a member, partnership is a member, whatever else is a member, but they're not living persons. And I would exclude them from candidacy, but that's beside the point, maybe. Do we want to continue? Is that sentence appropriate to stay on there?
Josh, could you zoom it just a smidge for my old lady eyes, since I don't have another desktop to go look at? And I didn't print out all the papers in front of me, so thank you.
Guys, I don't want to belabor this. We're running much too long as it is.
Yeah, I don't see how you can leave that sentence in there. You can't have a form prohibiting something that the bylaws doesn't prohibit.
That's the question.
Yeah, I don't see how you can do that. And if I can make another point, based upon whatever changes are ultimately adopted to the bylaws, this form may undergo change in the next election cycle. Next election cycle, you're sort of stuck with what you got.
Well, it's almost certain. Among other things, the committee's got references to the committee's got to change as well.
Right.
Another question, there'll be some changes. All right. I think Steve and I are talking that sentence ought to be removed. How about Laura and Bob?
I would agree with you. You can't put it in if it's not supported in the
I
bylaw.
agree. Let's just take it out.
Okay. That's our suggestion. We've lost our liaison. Well,
Back to the other computer.
while we're talking among ourselves, I guess, that my other comment on section 1 down at the bottom where it says mailing address if different from above, just leave it as mailing address. Among other things, it says list all Ocean Pines property addresses for which I have an ownership stake. Well, a lot of candidates probably only one, so it's the same address. But if somebody lists more than one property up there, which one's the mailing address? It's
Primary mailing address, yeah.
okay. Well, yeah. Either way, that's fine with me. Well, let's keep going. Well, looks like well, let's keep going. Well, yes, this she comes.
She's coming back.
Yeah, I see her. Colette, we've been working on the form while you were.
Yeah, I was printing a copy out for myself because I didn't have it here. Or I lost it. I'm like you, Jim. I got my papers mixed up.
You should see mine.
I wonder why.
Colette, the committee has, this is underneath the list all Ocean Pines property address. This is section 1.
Okay.
List all property the sentence in the fine print that says corporate entities, including et cetera, are not allowed. We're suggesting that should be removed. There's nothing in the bylaws that precludes that.
You've got mail.
Okay. Done.
Okay, in the next item, and again in section 1, where at the bottom it says mailing address if different from above. There could be more than one address. A suggestion is made that that should be primary mailing address.
Got it.
Okay, we haven't gotten to section 2 yet. Let's get to section 2. This is where this lists a series of questions, like I guess 4 of them, the answers to which, if yes, indicate that makes you ineligible to be a candidate. Any comments on what's there?
I
Yeah.
believe that the board struck out the familial relationship provision.
Okay.
That motion was withdrawn.
Okay, that would correspond to the fact that there is no such provision in the bylaws at this time.
Exactly. Yeah.
Can I just make a suggestion? Would it be possible to change this form so that you combine 2 and 3, but delete the bold descriptors at the top? In other words, you would delete a response to the following questions is mandatory. A yes answer to any of the following questions makes you ineligible as a candidate for the board of directors. And 3, comments to the following questions are not mandatory. However, be advised, these issues have proven to be of interest to voters and may become known as part of the candidate vetting process. if you just delete those two and combine 2 and 3 together, have you provided enough information to the voters for this election cycle to proceed? And therefore maybe truncate our debate to some degree.
Okay, again, you eliminate,
Another-
3 as a separate.
Right, and
Excellent.
take out the bold heading at the top of both 2 and 3.
And then do you take the questions asked in number 3 and format them as a yes, no,
Yes,
just like
precisely.
number 2?
Precisely. Absolutely.
And Steve, you're saying they would be mandatory.
I'm not, no.
Okay.
What I'm saying is the candidate has to fill out this form. Now, if the
Okay.
candidate decides not to answer a particular question,
Right.
as we note in disclosures and agreements, that's going to be available to the voters to see. And frankly, going back to our earlier discussion, it may be something the secretary wants to at least alert the candidate to, that says, well, you didn't answer question number 4, or however you want to list them.
And to verify,
I made
did
it.
you accidentally skip it or did you purposely not want to answer it?
Right.
Yeah.
And if the candidate says, no, I don't want to answer it, well, that's fine. But then it's going to be disclosed to everybody.
Right.
I mean, I don't know that you can do much more with this information in light of the fact we're still looking to do fairly widespread changes to the bylaws. So I'm just saying this might be the easiest way to deal with this form for this election cycle.
Okay, let me try to summarize.
Would
what you're
you-
suggesting. Yeah, you're suggesting is eliminate sections 2 and 3 as separate sections,
Right.
and make a section 2, each of these line items, delete the bold 2 and 3, and make each of these line items, I'm going to call them, a yes or no answer without any reference to what's mandatory or not, mandatory or optional, or what disqualifies you or doesn't disqualify. Simple informational questions.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah, and would you not number them then, so you got a quick reference?
That's fine.
Yeah, that's a good
And
point.
then make them all yes or no. Then you can say
Yeah.
question 6, you haven't answered. The members may be concerned about that. Think about it, whether you want it answered or not.
Precisely.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, it sounds like that's a suggestion from all of us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Okay, I
Steve,
got
you
it.
can-
So what I would
Okay.
write, if I'm gonna edit this, I would edit it to say section 2, answer yes, no to the following questions, provide supporting or additional information to any questions answered yes, or
No.
just
You
say
just leave
answer
it.
yes, no to the following questions.
Yeah. Just
I
leave it
think-
as yes or no.
Leave
Do
it
it,
at
yeah.
that. Okay.
That would be my suggestion, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
it's just answer
And then
yes, no.
section 4 becomes section 3.
Correct.
Josh, can you
Yes.
switch it up a
Yes.
little bit now?
And then
Uh,
section 5 becomes 4.
Correct.
Go ahead and in the new section 3 or current 4, if you want to call it, my suggestion is where it says service on any OPA advisory committee, delete the advisory.
Okay.
Because we have had a candidate who was at one time a member and president of or chair of the elections committee, which is not advisory committee.
Okay. Got it.
Okay, anything else on what is shows as 4? Now 3.
Do the numbers match though in the red here, the 10 in section 3? Did they, memory?
Those, I don't
Did
think
they get
those need
changed
to
to-
match, Laura,
Okay. All right.
because
Yeah.
they're not worded in the same way as the proposed bylaws revisions.
All right,
Okay.
that's fine.
Now, one question, quick one. The felony convictions, should those all be changed to 5 years?
That's just what Laura was asking. And I would say they don't need to because those questions are worded differently than the proposed bylaws language.
Okay,
Excuse me,
Yeah,
the
it-
proposed bylaws language requires that they have completed any penalties, certain sentencing and other penalties within the past 5 years. The conviction could have been 15 years ago.
okay.
Right, okay.
Uh,
Just, you want to scoot it up to the 4 now?
Yeah,
Did you-
we're down to what is the
So
new
we down to
four
5
disclosures and
or-
agreements. In the second, it's not numbered, of course, that should any of the information provided on this form be found to be incomplete, et cetera, it's not the board shall have cause to rescind your eligibility as the secretary.
Got it. Good catch.
Even though I don't agree.
Can you scoot it up just a little bit more?
We'll put an asterisk in there that Steve.
Thank you.
Uh,
And I think we're gonna have to change all those shalls to may because we have nothing in our bylaws that authorizes us to do these things. So the secretary may have cause at this point, and the board may have cause to remove you.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
Yes.
discretionary.
In the,
And the fiduciary responsibility is to the association, the corporation.
To the association, period.
Yeah,
Strike members.
and capitalize association.
Gotcha.
yeah, okay.
And so I think we we want to define end of business day as 4 p.m.
Uh,
Is that May 10th or 8th, correct? Or are we back on May 15th?
Right now, it would be May 10th.
It is, okay.
We're still operating on you got to get it to the search committee by the 10th and then the search committee to the secretary by the 15th. That's going to be, well, at least up until the first week in May, that's what it's going to be.
Okay.
If in the part where it's the actual signature part, where, to the best of my knowledge, in the middle of it where this form must be completed and returned with all attachments to the OPA general manager's office, etc. That now I've got to search for my papers. That's not the same as what's in paragraph 6D of the I think it's the 6D. Yeah, 6D of the text itself. 6D says something. All applications, completed applications must be submitted to a search committee box in the administration office. And it goes on, application will be time-stamped, dated, stored in a location, etc.
What section are you referring to, Jim?
6D, Delta, 6 Delta.
6 of the bylaws?
No, of the text of the resolution.
Oh, M06, okay.
M09,
M09, I'm sorry,
yeah.
dyslexic.
And I don't know, that could be there forever.
Oh, there it is.
So we're gonna have to change that
Yeah,
to
so that-
the secretary's box.
yeah, it could be, you know, as long as both provisions are the same thing.
Right,
Yeah, and probably easier to change the latter one here.
okay.
Now on the attachments. We require, I don't know that we require under the current bylaws, a state issued identification or supporting documentation of the proof of ownership. We do that?
The bylaws don't have to, I don't think the bylaws have to give us that authority.
We can
I
just-
think we can assume the authority to require a state issued identification, particularly in light of the recent litigation.
Okay. And the.
I'll check with Jeremy on that, but
Yeah. Well, I guess the same would apply to the documentation of proof of ownership required
yes,
for section 1. And then the optional attachments, we just have to renumber, I think.
Yeah,
yeah, I think response to any questions of section
2,
2
and then
and
desired by
desired section
experience
3.
and 3.
Got
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Okay.
So this also will go through board scrutiny and discussion. But definitely, you know, your committee's recommendations carry weight. I hope you realize that. Sometimes I'm sure it doesn't feel that way.
okay, do we have any further business on the M09 and the attachment or anything else that we've discussed so far to this point? All right, I'm gonna take it that we've concluded what we're intended to do today. The last agenda item is to schedule another meeting or the next meeting. I suggest that we just hold off on that today. And
Okay.
I come back in the near future and we figure out where we are and when we need to meet again, and also take into account the suggestion that Steve has made on more than one occasion, we'd be able to meet in person somehow. And after these months of talking at each other on a screen, get to see each other in person. So my suggestion is that we just hold off on scheduling another meeting at this time, and I'll be in communication with everybody on seeing where we go with the next meeting.
Well,
Other than that,
that way
Colette,
Good Keith,
I owe you a couple of motions, Colette. and I'll
Yes.
get on that right away.
Great. Thank you. And thank you guys so much
Any
for your time today and your very
Okay.
thorough and careful consideration of this.
And now that it's almost 5 o'clock Friday, you can start the weekend.
Time for our scotch.
Okay.
I move we adjourn. if we haven't
Yes.
already. Either that or.
Let's
future
consider
meetings.
ourselves adjourned